Good morning. Our hand today is going to be ace queen. It folds around to me. I raise. I should note this is a 25 NL game, so I raise it from the cutoff. This is my raise first in range, so I've got a mix of premium hands, some of these speculative hands. We have small blind that only have 44 hands in the pot. Big blind does defend a little bit. But that's okay. That's why I have this range. I'm not going to open up my range to try to attack players that fold too much. So we had a call by the small blind. Small blind, I have 44 hands on him. He's playing loose. It appears he's playing passively. When we look at his called 2-bet, it's 67% from the small blind. So 2 out of 3 times he's called. So I think he's got a somewhat wider range. I assigned it at 20% right now. Just something that's kind of standard from the small blind, from a looser player. I think an even looser player is going to have more. But if this player was in the big blind, he probably has much wider range than this. I'm going to give him some speculative hands, and maybe this is too wide, but 2 out of 3 times from the small blind calling. He's probably calling to play some hands, or at least that's what it seems like. So we see a flop, ace queen 10, the 2-pair villain checks. I think I'm going to be getting called by a lot of different hands, so I want to get some value for my 2-pair. I bet half pot, he calls. 8 of hearts came out. It's not favorite because he could have ace x hearts for the nut flush. He could have had some of the kings, king 9 maybe for the hearts, but significantly as I look at this now, he can't have king queen suited, can't have queen jack suited, can't have jack 10 suited or 10-9 suited. So I think in the moment I was overestimating how many flushes he has. So he checks to me, and I checked behind. 2 of spades come out. He checks. At this point, I checked behind because I'm not sure who's going to call me. I think ace X calls, but I think if he had like a jack 10 or maybe a king 10, I'm not sure if he calls me. But then again, I do think there are hands that could call me. He might be curious with those middle pair or the lower pair hands, since I checked the turn. So I want to see what GTO suggests. And right now, as I look at this hand again, as I said, in the moment, I think I overestimated how many hearts are out there. I could have probably gone ahead and bet that turn again and not really worried about that flush draw that's out there. Do note that I don't have the ace of hearts, so there is a possibility that he has the lone ace of hearts, let's say ace of hearts and jack of clubs or something like that, where he would call again on the turn. So I have villain checking. I've set it up so he doesn't donk. He has donked, I'm sorry, wrong guy. He hasn't donked at all, but 44 hands, so not a whole lot. And then it's on me, and it does look like we are checking a large percentage of the time. I think that's somewhat interesting. So the straights were not sets. It's about 50-50 we're betting. 2-pair we're betting. Not a huge amount, so I have club and diamond. So if you look at ace of clubs, queen of diamonds, small percentage. I think we're probably guarding against the possibility that villain is going to raise, maybe. So if he checks, so if he bets and calls, and then he checks again, and we bet. So I'm kind of at a loss at this point. I guess with ace queen, this hits our range so hard that it's probably less likely that he's going to have a hand that calls. So he's still calling 51%. So I consider that quite a bit of value. But when we look at his calling hands, he's calling with the straight. I'm sorry, he's calling with some straights. He's calling with sets and two pairs, and top pair, middle pair, weak pair. I would think those are all hands that we want to go for value. That's going to include the gut shots, the open enders, flush draws, and so forth. I think we should probably try to go for some value against those players. And we can. I mean, ace queens in our range. Some of the time we should be betting. And we can adjust it too, adjust his calling hands and see if that affects our decision. But for GTO, if he's playing GTO, it looks like most of the time we're going to be checking on this board, and that again, that is I think a bit surprising. Note we are betting a little bit more with the small pocket pairs, with some of these hands that completely miss. We're betting some of our open enders, our trips, betting some of our nut flush draws here. I'm probably betting too much, so and I'm sure losing out on some EV on that. So I did bet, and then Villain's supposed to be calling with a lot of hands. He should be folding his junk. And then we had an 8 of hearts comes out, and Villain checks 100% again. I wouldn't expect anything different. He hasn't shown aggression yet. Although last night I was facing quite a few players that were calling on the flop and then leading into me on the turn. I haven't seen that many people do that. So anyways, it's back to us. He checks. Ace queen, we've got two pair. Now it looks like we are betting somewhat. We're betting with our ace of hearts, but we're checking when we don't. So I do like that play. I do like that play. I think we're guarding against the possibility that he has the hearts. Now, obviously, if we have the ace of hearts, it makes it less likely that he can't have the ace of hearts at that point if we have it. So I think if we don't have the ace of hearts, it's going to be encouraging him to call a bit more. So I think we're going to be less inclined to bet at that point. So let's see here. Top pair checks, mostly checks. Pocket pair below the top card, mostly checks. Middle pair checks. Our nut flush draw is going to be betting, and I think that's where we're getting the aces. If we have the nut flush draw, we're going to be betting those. Second and third nut flush draws, we're going to mostly be checking, and then we're also going to be betting most of these weak flush draws, these lone fives, lone sixes as a pairs, and I think we can always pick up the flush, or we can hit trips. So I think that's interesting. So I did check, and then we had 2 of spades. 2 of spades comes out, and now Villain, since we checked, Villain's supposed to lead out about a third of the time. He's leading out with his about half the time with his flushes, with the weaker flushes, some nut flushes, but some weaker flushes. His straights, he's supposed to bet more of these straights than I think the flushes. Betting sets, 2 pair most of the time, so kind of get some value from the flushes and straights and sets. Because again, would I have a heart? I mean, would it make sense for me to check my flush draw? Not really. I think with the flush draw, we're still going for some value. So once I checked, I think you can eliminate a lot of flushes, and at this point, you're going to get some value from some of the weaker flushes, but some of the other flushes, which you're hoping for, is to check and then me bet and then probably raise. So let's see here. If I bet, yeah, then he's going for a raise with his solid hands. So he did check, which means I think weaker hands. Again, possibility of the nut flush if he's a player like that. I don't think most players do that. So then it's on me. Do I bet or check? It does look like I'm betting some of my 2 pair. So ace of spades and queen of diamonds, ace of clubs and queen of diamonds. So here, 2 pair. Ace of clubs, queen of diamonds, there we are. Somewhat betting, but mostly checking, so that's against a GTO player, and I'm sure we've got value. We don't want to get, if we bet half pot here, he's going to call with 2 pair, he's going to call with top pair, some middle pair, but we can get raised off, could get raised. I think when we think about 2 pair, I think we're getting raised by hands that beat us, and we're getting called by hands that might beat us. So how do I think I played this hand? I'm surprised we were supposed to check this hand, but I guess we hit this hand's, there's so many hands that could call, that could raise us as bluffs, that we would, we don't really want to play those hands with the 2 pair, because they do have a lot of equity. I can think, king jack hearts, huge hand, and that could be in his calling range. So let's modify some things a little bit. So we bet, is he ever going to raise? I maybe king jack raises. Maybe he raises. We're gonna say it'll just be a call. He almost never raises, because he is afraid, and he's going to call with all of these aces. So he never raises because he's afraid, if he has a flush or if he has a straight, that the heart will come and he'll get beat. So I think on a lot of players, they will wait to raise on the turn when they have their straight or their set. So let's run that. All right, we're done. We've set it up. So now that we have him calling instead of raising, now it changes a lot of our bets to c-betting. So I think we're more in line with that, with players that are only going to call and not raise us. So we bet, and then he calls, and I think he calls with all of those. And then we have the 8 of hearts. So he checks again, and we could better check. So let's go with a bet. If we bet, what hands will he call? What hands will he raise? I don't think a straight flush raises. So let's adjust this. I think the straight flush calls. The nut flush, I think, calls and goes for the raise later. The straight's definitely going to call. The set's, I think, going to call. 2 pairs going to call. What other 2 pair? Oh, ace 3. Oh, hold on. 2 pairs going to call. Top pair. Yeah, I think top pair is going to be calling. At least down to like ace 9, ace 8. Or ace 9. I don't know about these small aces. I think if I bet, he's probably just going to fold those, unless you have the flush. Middle pair, probably. So middle pair, let's get this. King, queen calls, queen, jack calls. I think those hands call. I don't think queen, jack calls. Or, I'm sorry, queen 9. Even though that is, gut shot, I'm not sure if he would have had a queen 9 in his range. We could have excluded this. So I think those, your second pair with the gut shot, I think players call those. The weak pair hands, yeah, we're gonna say jacks call, jack 10 call, king 10. I think Jack's call. Let's do King 10 folds and Jack 10 folds. All right, so that's their raise, their call. If I bet net flush draw calls, all of that, he looks passive. So let's run the solver again. We'll all right, we've got it set. So going back, doesn't look like anything changes on the flop. We're still betting. He's still calling with his frequencies. He checks, and now it's on us. And now with his calling ranges, I think it looks like we are still betting here. So if we make these assumptions about his calling range, that he's rarely going to be raising us, because he's going to go for the raise on the river, then I think we can get some value from on the turn, because he's going to be calling with like a king, queen, queen, jack. So it does look like we are betting. We're betting for value, all the way from like a pocket pair below the top card. So kings, kings plus middle pair. Now we start checking behind. So if we check then, and we get that 2 of spades, then he's supposed to lead. So we're gonna fix this. I think quads bets. I think our flushes, at least ace 9. Yeah, we'll say all of his flushes bet. Do I think the straights bet? Maybe the straights bet. Sets, that I don't think. I think sets are checking. I think a lot of players. Well, hold on. Yeah, sets are gonna bet. This is a 25 NL game. Usually the players are a little bit better at this site. I don't think top pair bets. I don't think top pair bets. I don't think weak pair bets. I don't think no made hand bets. I don't think he has any bluffs in his hand. Middle pair, I don't think. I think he's betting for value. So let's run our solver here again. Check it out. All right, it's done. So we're still betting 55%. Here we're checking, 45%. And now Villain's supposed to be betting, leading into us that percentage. He checks, and now, and we do have a few ace queens. Now we bet. Since he checks, I think we're going for some value, because if we bet, I do think some of our the top pair and middle pairs, at least the top pair, are going to be calling here. So what does he have? He shows king 9, and that's an interesting hand, because I don't know. I do think we had him in his range. King 9 was there. He checks. We bet, and then king 9 clubs was supposed to fold, and he didn't. So we can always add that and say, okay, he's going to call with king 9. And that was a king 9 clubs. And if he does that, then it's probably queen 9, and he's probably calling with 10s and 9s and 8s. 10 8s, 9 8s. We'll leave it at that. So let's run solver now and see what we get. So it's probably likely that he's calling more than he should. Which means that we are likely going to be betting. There it is. Oh, so I'm wrong. Looks like we are checking a little less frequent, or we're checking more frequently, betting less. Still with ace queen, I do think we're betting. Huh. So we block with jacks, we block all of those king hands that would be calling. So let's say we bet and he calls, and then he checks, and now we bet again. So I mean, I'm not far off. I think if we bet the flop, we're probably going to be betting again on the turn. If he calls all of those hands instead of raising, he checks to us, then it looks like we're checking a lot of our hands. We're going to be betting straights and flushes, and checking everything else. So I think if we messed up this hand, is probably missing that turn barrel. So hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, look tomorrow for another.